Good day, everyone. Welcome to our subject, Rhetorics, Speech and Oral Communication. So, I am your subject teacher, Miss Marineth Almalubag. So, very few of you ay kilala na ako, pero karamihan ay ngayon lamang tayo magamit virtually. Na? So, I hope we could all get along together throughout this subject, okay? So, ayan, pagpasensyahan niyo na muna yung aking boses ngayon at medyo may cold ako, ano, and baka may noise kayong naririnig during this lecture ay um, pagpasensyahan niyo na rin, okay? Yan, so without further ado, let's start discussing our first topic, which is all about the introduction to speech and oral communication. Okay, so as you have read in the module that I have gave you last week, so this topic includes three lessons. The first lesson that we would tackle is about speech and its nature, and the second one is the functions of speech communication, while the last one would be the definition, nature, and characteristics of language. Right? Yeah, and towards the end of this topic, the intended learning goals for you are as follows. So first, you should comprehend the essentials of communication and language, and you should recall your knowledge on oral and speech communication. And lastly, you should familiarize yourselves with the role of language in communication. Okay, so for our first topic, let's start it off with this quote from P.B. Shelley. Okay, so it says, "He gave man speech, and speech created thought, which is the measure of the universe." Okay, so from this, it simply conveys that our amazing ability to communicate through speech sets us apart from other earthly species, just like the animals. Ano, kaya you might have read na rin sa inyong module doon sa first part na it says there na speech is a God-given faculty which sets apart human beings from animals. Okay? Um, Ayan. So, paano ba natin nasabi yun? Paano nasabi ni PB Shelley yun? So, because unang-una, ang major medium of communication natin, of our daily experiences is what? Speech, di ba? So, we can communicate our thoughts, our ideas, our desires, and of course, our feelings by the use of intelligible words by means of speech. Okay? So, ang katangi-tanging potential ng speech ay ang humankind lamang ang nakaka-develop noon ng speech and oral communication. At tayo rin lamang ang tanging nakakagamit noon for mutual understanding and appreciation. Okay? So, that ability, the ability to articulate, is so essential to our emotional maturity, to our inner harmony, and to our mental balance as a person. Now, and of course, speech reflects our countless aspirations and frustrations. Ayan, yung ating proudest achievements, ano, yung ating mga shameful and unworthy failures natin, ano. So, kung walang speech and oral hindi natin ma-express yung mga bagay na yun. Okay, so kung hindi imposible, it would be very difficult for us to coordinate or isagawa yung ating mga daily activities o yung mga pang-araw-araw nating gawa without speech. Okay? I hope this is clear on your end, guys. And sana ay nakakasunod kayo. So, ano pa ba? Speech. Yeah. Speech is a vehicle for personality development. So, nabanggit na rin kanina. Ano? So, being the means of acquiring a pleasing and acceptable personality. So, how can it be? Paanong nagiging vehicle for personality development ang speech? paano po nangyayaring medium din ang speech para ma-develop natin yung ating personality? Well, would you agree that the way we articulate instantly reveals our background, yung ating training, yung ating self-discipline, at maging yung ating pinag-aralan or yung ating educational background? Nag-agree ba kayo doon? Obviously, base sa ating mga experiences, no? So, sa ating mga nakikilala or nakakasalamuhang tao, the impression that we make depends much on the ease and liveliness on how we talk, how we advance or defend our convictions and principles, and pati na rin doon sa attractiveness ng ating voice, ano, ng ating pagsalita. Kasi an effective uh, speech communication, it implies not only a well-modulated voice, hindi lamang siya doon nagabasa sa kung paano natin minamodulate yung ating boses, no? Hindi lang yung tama ang paggamit ng malakas at mahinang boses, pati na rin syempre yung articulation na kainti-intindi, ano, yung papakinggan mo lang ng isang beses at hindi na kailangan paulit-ulitin pa para maintindihan yung message ng sinasabi mo, no? But how can we do that? Paano natin magagawa yun? So, syempre, dapat ay accurate tayo in the production of the individual sounds na ng bawat letters at pati na rin doon sa ating word selection sa pagpili kung ano yung appropriate word doon sa specific na nire-refer natin sa ating mga ina-express. Okay? Ano pa ba? And of course, ano, another point to emphasize, not just in this topic, but in the whole subject natin. Generally, speech and oral communication is a way of self-expression without a pen, without using pen. Okay? So, yeah, without a pen. We can express ourselves, di ba, when we write. We can share our thoughts in our diary. We can tell our reaction through a reaction paper or commentary paper. And also, we can send message to someone through letters. No? So, may mga ganon in written communication nagagawa natin yun. But in speech and oral we express those things by spoken communication and not by written. Okay? And with that, masasabi natin speech and oral is very essential to our growth as human kasi eventually it will pave the way for our self discovery and self renewal. No, kapag hindi mo sinanay ang sarili mo sa spoken communication, mahihirapan kang makisama at makisalamuha sa ibang tao, no? Kaya it is therefore something that should be pursued to perfection, lalo na sa inyo napapasok sa agricultural industry, no? So, sa isang trabaho, you should be aware ngayon pa lang na you only have yourself to rely on, no? So, sa pag-a-apply pa lamang sa trabaho, ano, wala kang ibang aasahan kundi ang sarili mo. Ikaw ang i-interviewin ng employer. Wala kang ibang aasahan kundi yung sarili mo. No, hindi naman ang kapatid mo yung interviewin ng employer mo. Yung personality and yung skills mo ang itetest nila at hindi ng mga kaibigan mo. Okay? So, ikaw ang dapat maghasa pa lang, ngayon pa lang, ng iyong speech and oral communication skills. Okay? Ayan. So, ganun na nga, ano, remember always that effective oral communication followed by listening ability and enthusiasm, yun yung um, most important factor in helping you, college students, to get employment. Okay? So, kaya ngayon pa lang, kailangan mo ng masanay na makipag-usap sa ibang tao, sa mga professionals, lalo-lalo na, at sa iba't iba pang uri ng tao sa ating society. Why? Because in this age of high-tech technology, it is still a world of speech and oral communication. Okay? So, while there is an increasing use of telecommunications and cybernetic communication to access the information doon sa superhighway, person-to-person speech communication situation remains as the basic means of global communication pa rin. Okay, so naging alternative lang itong kinds of virtual communication natin ito because of the pandemic. Okay, but as you can see and observe, we are unti-unti we are nearing to the back to normal setup. No, so magkakausap na ulit tayo face to face. Hopefully, na ang klase natin ay mangyayari na inside the classroom at sana'y hindi na ganito kasi pare-parehas tayo nahihirapan na, no? Even though 2 years na hindi pa rin natin masabi na naka-adjust na tayo, nakaka-adapt tayo pero hindi pa tayo fully adjusted sa ganitong sitwasyon. No? Yan, mga presentation ninyo, reporting ninyo, magaganap na to sa harap ng maraming tao. No, so let's just hope and pray na with those said, mapapractice na ulit natin yung ating speech and oral communication skills personally. Okay? Alright, so now for its definition naman na as you can see in this slide, speech and oral communication is the process of sharing meanings of message through audible and visual codes such as voice, facial expression, gestures, movement, posture, and the like. Okay, so as I've said earlier nga, it is a form, speech and oral com is a form of self-expression without the use of pen, no? But instead, it is a type of communication through our mouth, yan, our body, yung ating pagkilos, yung ating paggalaw, pati na rin yung ating pananamit, yung ating self-presentation, no? So, yung posture, yung ating pagtayo habang tayo ay nagkasalita or nakikipag-usap sa ating mga audience or listener. No, so kasama rin siya sa speech and oral communication. Okay? Yan, what else? It is also a process that includes elements such as participants, context, messages, channels, noise, and feedback. Alright. So later, we will discuss each of them, each of those elements one by one. Okay. So now, uh, keep this in mind. Ha, this definition. So this is the most or the simplest definition na ng speech and oral communication. And yeah, you may comprehensively understand its concept through this simple definition pa lang, 'di ba? So, makakatukoy agad na tayo ng examples, no? So, ano-ano yung mga examples ng oral communication? Speeches, presentations, discussions, lectures such as this, interview, meetings, what else? Our daily in-person conversation, ano, with our loved ones, with our family, with our friends. Okay, so yung mga yun. Okay, so now, in order for us to have a thorough understanding towards our topic, speech and oral com, let us now know the speech and oral communication process. Okay, so we all know naman that everything has a process, diba? And speech and oral communication is no exception. Right, so to simply put first, bago tayo mag-delve in dito sa speech process, the process begins with the formulation of an idea by the speaker, okay? And then the idea will be encoded naman into language that is to be transmitted through audible and visible symbols to the receiver. And after that, as the receiver receives the message, he or she will decode them and may physically or verbally respond to the speaker. No, but it doesn't goes like that lang. Yun lang yung simplest and easiest paliwanag for the process of that kind of communication. Yan. As you can see here sa ating slide, the process of speech and oral communication involves 8 stages, and let us discuss them one by one. And for the first stage, which is the thinking stage, well, it starts with the birth of an idea sa end ng speaker. So, nagasimula itong process na to with the presence of stimulus. Katulad na lang ng balita, news, mapa-negative or positive remark man yung balita na yun, basta yung nakakapag-activate ng sensory process ng ah, isang ng speaker or ni speaker. So, excuse me. Pag meron kang isang bagay na gustong pag-usapan or gawing topic sa isang discussion, yun yung nakakapag-trigger sa'yo na mag-perform ng speech and oral communication. Kaya, being the speaker, you should exactly know what you want to convey with your kausap, or with the audience. Kasi, otherwise, hindi ka magkakaroon ng courage na humarap doon sa iyong kausap kasi you'll be confused about the topic kung hindi mo alam kung hindi ka knowledgeable enough about the topic. Ano, and eventually, baka maging laughing stock ka lang ng iyong audience or ng iyong kausap kapag you're not knowledgeable enough doon sa topic na yan. So in this stage, what the speaker needs to do is to think and gather all the ideas that you need to convey. Okay? And second stage is symbolizing. And so after the speaker has decided what idea he or she has to share, the speaker is then ready to communicate orally through the use of words. Okay? So dito nangyayari yung pag-forward ng idea doon sa nerve fibers sa brain ni speaker. So kasama ng napaprocess together with the ideas yung perception ni sender, uh, base sa kanyang experiences, sa kanyang environment, and even sa kanyang culture. So, na-evaluate na rin doon sa utak ni speaker or the sender kung ang merit ba ng stimulus na yun ay constructive ba o destructive. Does it implies positive or negative force? Ganun. No, so, ina-identify na dito pa lang sa stage na to, yung pinakang essence ng mga asabihin ni speaker. Okay? At kasabay nun ay nag-iisip na si sender ng right words that should be chosen and used para maging appropriate yung idea para maparating sa receivers yung tamang meaning ng message. Okay? So, paano natin yung magagawa? Lalo na't may kanya-kanyang interpretation nga daw ang mga tao. Lalo sa panahon ngayon, 'di ba? Yan. Well, a working knowledge uh, of the mastery of the language na gagamitin natin or ni speaker is required na para ma-share niya ang kanyang thoughts and feelings in most effective way. Kasi 'di ba, alam kong na-experience na rin ng marami 'to, no? So kapag inadequate or hindi enough yung speaking vocabulary mo, it can cause a breakdown in communication. At para maiwasan na mangyari yon, we as speakers should select a language that is easy for us to use and for the listener to understand. Okay? And with that, as speakers, uh, we need to improve pa no our vocabulary para in case man na ma-mental block tayo kapag nasa unahan na tayo or nakikipag-usap na tayo at nalimutan natin yung ating napaka-prepared na talk ay di may ano tayo, may stock tayong vocabulary words na pwede natin magamit for impromptu talks and such, no? Yan. So, ayan, that talks about the second stage. Next, third stage, we have expressing. Okay, so having decided on what words are to use by the speaker, he or she is now ready to express his or her ideas in an audible speech. Yung naririnig na ng kanyang kausap or ng kanyang audience. No? Ganun din, while expressing it vocally, may incorporation na rin ng appropriate gestures or ng movements para makatulong sa pag-express ng message. Okay? Kung yung symbolizing stage ay nag-aisip pa lamang ng mga words na kailangan gamitin si speaker, dito sa expressing stage ay na-encode na niya yung thought into words or language symbols, okay? So mahalagang i-consider dito yung language na gamit ni speaker ha. That should be the same language that the listener knows and understands. Yan. And another thing dito rin nangyayari sa stage na to, yung scene na kapag hindi magets or maintindihan ni listener yung nasabi ni speaker, then he or she must rephrase or rearrange his or her words into a more appropriate one. Kaya atandaan natin palagi na requirements sa pag-express ng ideas ang clear, good voice, and as well as the physical delivery. Okay? So, yung tatlong yun. Clear voice, good voice, and as well as the physical delivery. Okay? Ayan. So, for the fourth stage, we have transmitting. Right? So, well, this stage is actually kasabay nitong nauna, nitong expressing. Okay, so because as the speaker expresses his or her ideas, na-externalize na niya yung kanyang thoughts through channels. So, what are these channels? Yan yung ating voice, yung ating touch or physical presence, yung ating movements, yung ating facial expressions, gestures, and all the other available means. Okay, so kailangan pang ma-identify itong stage na to kasi uh, uh, yung proximity and the disturbances within the surroundings may interfere in the transmission of the speaker's idea and feelings, no? So, ano yung mga disturbances na yon? Yung ating, say for example, ay nervousness, yung ating pagiging kabado, what else? Yung distance natin sa listener, sa ating audience, yung ingay sa paligid, yung noises, yung distractions, no? Ayan yung mga ganung bagay. Ayun. At dito rin sa stage na to natin na isasagawa yung tama at successful na pag-transmit ng message doon sa receivers. Okay? Ayan. Um, we have receiving. So for the next stage, we have the receiving stage. So as the sound waves, which carry the ideas of the speaker, reach the ears of the listeners, a series of movements takes place. Okay, so yung neural impulses para doon sa mga words na na-receive the listener at yung light waves naman para naman doon sa mga nakita ni listener na gestures sa speaker, na forward yung mga yon, yung neural impulses at saka yung light waves na yun, na forward sila doon sa brain ni listener. Kaya in this stage, the message is heard and the speaker's gestures are seen by the receiver who acts as a who acts and senses. Okay? And after that, the decoding stage. Yan. So the decoding stage happens. So this stage allows the receiver or the listener to understand what the speaker wants to convey. How does it happen po, ma'am? So, well, the receiver decodes the message he or she received from sound to language. Okay? At syempre, understanding will take place only upon receiving the ideas of the speaker through the voice with supplementary gestures, no? So kaya dito mapasok yung kapag yung vocabulary ni listener ay different doon sa language na ginamit ni speaker, it will become complex, no? So the communication will become very complex or complicated. Ayan. Kaya with that, both the speaker and the listener won't come up with a common idea talaga sa kanilang pag-uusap. Okay, is it clear? I hope yes. Yan. Next, second to the last stage, we have reaction or feedback. Okay, so here, the first sender receives the receiver's response, then evaluates and reacts to the message using the same channel and the same manner of interchange. And so kung in person mo na-receive yung message, then the receiver will be more likely give his or her reaction or feedback face to face then. Kung virtually, say for example, sa iyong thesis proposal defense, na you presented your proposal virtually, then you will be able to receive feedback from the panel virtually. Okay? So in this stage, the feedback goes on until both parties feel that the purpose of communication is fulfilled. Okay? Normal naman na sa atin na makarinig at maging involved doon sa situation na nagabigay ng kanya-kanyang responses from both speakers and receivers, 'di ba? So doon nag-occur yung giving of feedback and reaction. Okay, so may palitan between the communicators. And pero on the other hand, malimit ding mangyari yung walang responses na nangyayari sa isang communication, 'di ba? And uh, that failure to give responses may hinder naman the speaker from giving feedback on the reactions nga pala, um, reactions and feedbacks are not just in the form of oral or spoken communication, ha? It may be in the form of applause, smiling, no, yung even yung pagyon, yung paghikab natin, yung mga patingin-tingin and such, and even yung pagpapakita natin ng boredom. Okay, so that's a form of reaction then. Okay, and yeah, finally, for the last stage, we have monitoring. Okay, so here, the speaker should be sensitive in giving the needs of his or her audience. Kahit ito na yung pinakahuling stage, this stage should be um, not be disregarded because it is only through this monitoring stage that the speaker determines if may comprehension bang nangyari dun sa communication. No, kaya the speaker should really look into the kind of reactions of the listeners para he or she could give the necessary and um, appropriate alternatives on how to make the audience understand his or her message. Okay? And also, I hope this speech and oral communication process is clear on your end, guys. Okay? If you have any questions or clarifications, you may note them down muna na sa ninyo i-raise sa ating group chat after you watch this lecture video. Okay? Yan. Um, Moving on, let us now review the elements of speech and oral communication. Okay. So, natakal nyo na to probably sa inyong mga subjects na during your senior high or junior high. Ano kaya, re-reviewin or pahapyawan na lang natin itong topic na ito. Okay? So, here, meron tayong 6 elements of speech communication. And first is participant. Alright, so in communication, 'di ba? Participants are the communicators who are both senders and receivers. Okay, so as senders, they are the origin of the message who encodes feelings, ideas, thoughts, and emotion into some form of message. Okay, at syempre, it begins with a specific intention or purpose from the sender, him or herself. So he or she is the source of the message. Kaya the sender must really know why the communication is necessary and what result is needed doon sa communication. Okay? And on the other hand naman, sa receiver, he or she is the one who hears or listens to whatever kind of message is being delivered by the sender. Okay, so ang receiver, siya yung ina-expect na magbigay ng response or feedback as he or she receives the message. Okay, but it is important rin, of course, to realize that uh, every receiver will be listening to the message through their own individual expectations, opinions, and perspectives. Ibig sabihin, um, their individual experiences will unconsciously influence on how the message is received and understood. Okay? Kaya the sender of the message does not have a control talaga on what will be the response of the receiver and even kung meron ba or kung wala bang magiging response si receiver sa kanyang sinasabi or sa kanyang dineliver na message. Okay? Second element, we have context. And we have five milieux under it. Okay. But first, what does the context here refers? Well, it refers to the interrelated conditions ng nangyayaring speech and oral communication. At may limang milieux nga na nagiging factor doon. Okay, so first we have the physical milieu. Okay, so this implies where and when the communication takes place. Sa public area ba? Sa tanghaling tapat ba nangyayari? Kasi yung init ng araw, it may be a factor naman talaga, di ba? And also, sa pag sa pakipag-usap, no? And also, it refers to the environmental conditions like, ayun nga, temperature, lighting, and even uh, the noise level sa ating surroundings. Let's say, for example, pag sa tabing kalsada naganap yung communication, we cannot avoid noises like yung busina ng sasakyan, no, yung mga taong may kalakasan ang pagsasalita, ano, and the likes. At yeah, dito rin nakapaloob sa physical milieu yung distance between or among the communicators. Is it face-to-face, na literal na magkalapit ang communicators? Is it virtually? ah ah, naga mm, is it meters away yung layo ng sender sa receiver na and such. Next is the social milieu. Ayan, so it talks about naman to the nature of relationships existing between or among the communicators. Yan. So kasi 'di ba, what and how messages are formed, shared and understood would basically depend on whether the interaction takes place among family members, friends, colleagues, work associates, and such. Sabi nga niya ay may iba't ibang personality ang isang tao when he or she is with family or with friends. No? So, some cannot talk about some things with his or her family. At ang iba naman ay hindi comfortable makipag-communicate sa strangers or sa hindi close friend. No? So, meaning, social milieu is really a factor. Okay? Ayan. Third, Psychological milieu. So, isa pa tong factor na to, no? So, as humans, the moods and feelings ng communicators may be a factor din. Let me give you an example. So, the same joke that amuses you when you are in a bantering mood makes you explode angrily when you are in a hostile mood naman. Tapos, di ba't may kasabihan tayo na pagbiro na sa lasing, wag na sa bagong gising. At kasi nga, wala pa sa mood yun. Okay? And fourth, we have cultural milieu. So, ito yung beliefs, values, and also yung norms that are being shared by a large group of people, and it can obviously be a factor sa context ng communication. How? Paano siya nagiging factor? Well, say for example, interaction is very much easier with someone of your own race, 'di ba? Kasi kapag hindi mo kaparehas ng kanlalakihang norms, yung iyong audience or yung iyong kausap, you have to consider pa and to be very careful not only with yung iyong words na gagamitin but with your movements na rin, no? Kasi there are instances na magkakaiba ang interpretation ng bagay-bagay dahil we are living in the world with different cultures, okay? Let's say, for example, giving of feedbacks dito sa Pilipinas is very normal, uh, and we take it in a positive way. Pero in some countries, giving feedback is a form of negative, is a form of negative practice, lalo na sa isang organization. Yun yung napakaiwas-iwasan nilang gawin. Kaya, ayun, culture is really a factor talaga in communication. Okay? And lastly, for the context, we have historical milieu. Okay, so ito naman yung background from the previous communication incidents between the participants, which can affect, excuse me, the understanding and context in the current exchange. Say, for example, nagkaroon ng iringan ang dalawang colleagues sa work ano, because of misunderstanding from their last conversation. At yun yung nagiging factor kung bakit hindi nagiging successful yung presentation ng isa. No, so, na-distract siya kasi isa sa audience yung kanyang nakairingan. So, meaning it really affects the speech and oral communication, the historical milieu. Okay? Ayan. Third element, we have message. So ito nga yung information na ina-encode and sinisend ni sender by means of verbal and non-verbal symbols. And yeah, speaking of which, messages can be constructed verbally, non-verbally, through semiotics, textually, and visually. Okay, so yung verbal messages, yan. I know you all know it naman ano. It is the usage of spoken words for the speech, while nonverbal messages naman, sila yung may paralinguistic features. Okay, so ayan, yan yung ating gestures, yung ating movements, facial expressions, yung ating intonation sa pagsalita, yung ating tone, no? Basta yung mga non-lexical elements na ating na-incorporate kapag tayo ay nagsasalita or nag-express. Okay? And to emphasize, itong non-verbal messages na ito, they could be a support or kontra doon sa ating sinasabi verbally. Okay? Let's say, for example, when you say, I am happy, so your smiles and cheerful energy na napakita mo sa listener or sa iyong audience, it could support your statement na you are happy. But if you say, I am not nervous, pero pawis na pawis ka, na ah, pero kahit nasa malamig kang ano na area, pero pawis na pawis ka, at you kept on taking deep breaths, no, with matching pagkukuyakoy pa. So those movements and occurrences totally contradict what you have just said na hindi ka nakabahan. Okay, so did you get it? Na kontra, ang nonverbal messages can support and pwede rin siya maging kontra doon sa sinasabi mo verbally. Kaya you have to be very careful with that then. Okay? And so for the last kind of message, semiotic, textual, and visual messages. So dyan na napasok yung ating multimodal types of communication like audiovisual presentation na nag-provide ng specific or non-specific meanings from the communicator or from the sender's thoughts. Okay? And so meaning, without a message, there is no cause for communicating, right? Yan. Next, we have channels. So again, channels, ito yung medium na nagamit when sending the message or the information in order for the listener to receive the message or the information. So, pwedeng gumamit ng visual channel or ng auditory channel. So, pag sinabi natin visual channel, it refers to the light na nakikita ni listener or ni receiver. Na, so, yun yung light waves that carry the nonverbal symbols. Okay, so again, yun yung mga gestures, facial expressions, and such. While yung auditory channel naman, it refers to the sounds. Okay, so sila naman yung sound waves that carry the verbal symbols such as words and vocal cues, like yung ating tone sa pagsalita, yung pitch, and even the volume, ano, yung lakas ng ating pagsasalita. Okay, so ang mga examples ng channel sa speech and oral comm ay face-to-face conversation, telephone calls, video conferences like in Zoom, Google Meet, what else? Ito, yung ating audiovisual presentation. So, pwede dyan yung YouTube, mga FB videos and such. Okay? So, that's channel in communication. And second to the last, we have the noise. Ayan. So as I have mentioned earlier, in communication process, anything that blocks for the communication to be successful is what we called noise. So yung mga noise na yun ang nag-interfere between the sender and the receiver para ma-deliver ng maayos at maliwanag yung information. Okay, so sa madaling sabi, they are the distractions. May it be any, in any or all of these four noises, physical, mental, auditory, and psychological. Yan. So first is the physical noise. So this physical noise occurs when biological or other physical issues interfere when we are communicating. Let's say, for example, kapag yung listener ay may nararamdamang sakit, he or she cannot basically focus in the conversation because the level of pain he or she may feel may prevail him or her from communicating. Okay, so some other example is pagkagutom, ano, so pag gutom yung kausap mo ay hindi mo makausap na maayos at yun nga, nafe-feel niyang gutom siya at hindi siya okay, ano. Like for example din ay fatigue, medication, and as such, okay? And second is the mental noise. So, it talks about naman the activeness of the person's mentality during the conversation. So, di ba, we have this cliche statement na physically present but mentally absent. So, that's it. Ikaw ay todo paliwanag sa kausap mo, tapos nalipad pa lang ang isip, ay hindi alam na siya pala ay kausap, ganun. Kaya that is considered as a noise, the mental noise. Okay, so third is the auditory noise. So this pertains naman to the interferences in our environment that relates to our sense of gearing. No? So katulad nga ng binigay ko example kanina, kung kayo ng kausap mo ay nag-uusap sa tabing kalsada, you will tend to hear the vehicles honking their horn, then the message spoken by your kausap. No. Another example, nagkaklase kunwari tayo sa inside the classroom, tapos may mga students sa labas na malalakas ang boses at nagasigawan. So, you, my students inside the classroom, may get distracted at hindi nyo mapakinggan at maintindihan ng maayos yung aking lecture. So, yeah, that's the auditory noise. Okay? And lastly, we have the psychological noise. So this refers naman to the qualities in us human now, so that affect how we communicate and interpret others. For instance, if you are preoccupied with problems, then you may become inactive or inattentive now at a group meeting. If you feel depressed or stressed, communicating with others is a bit mahirap talagang gawin. So, psychological noise. Yan, so those are considered as barriers or noises that can affect the speech and oral communication. Okay? And yeah, finally, uh, the last element we have here is the feedback. So again, no matter what channel was used to convey the message, feedback can be a help to determine how successful the communication was. And with that, it also offers a chance to um, adjust the sender's communication process for the future. Right? So that completes the six elements of speech and oral communication. And I hope by this time na patapos na tayo sa lesson 1 about the nature of speech, sana ay na-realize nyo na rin ang importance ng speech and oral communication na. Yeah, and if you should probably develop an appreciation of the importance of speech and oral bakit po, ma'am? Kasi hindi lang naman siya natukoy sa public address. Di porket speech, ibig sabihin na nun ay you are talking in front of a large crowd or a number of people. Although such speaking is important, we spend more time communicating in less formal speech situations. Yung ating pakikipag-interact sa mga tao araw-araw. No, so that's a form of speech and oral communication. And without a question, such activity, speech and oral communication, is a step towards better communication. Okay, so kaya we have to practice that skill. Okay? Yan. So that ends our lecture for lesson 1 ano. So let's move on na rin agad to the lesson 2, which is the functions of speech and oral Yan. So, as discussed na sa introductory part kanina, speech and oral is important in realizing our goals, in the acceptance of or and expression of one's own personality, and even in the adjustment to the society. So, sa madaling sabi, uh, speech and oral comm therefore contributes to the social growth and psychological stability by enabling we as individuals to know ideas and feelings, to proclaim our existence, and to even learn to adjust to our environment and society. And para mas lalo nating ma-appreciate and uh, ang kahalagahan ng speech and oral comm, let's know the three categories of its functions. Ayan. Ayan. So, manifold as they may be, communication functions can be grouped into these three categories: the sender's standpoint, the society's standpoint, and the receiver's standpoint. Yan. So, as for the sender's standpoint, it may be for information, instruction, persuasion, and entertainment. So, alam na naman ninyo to, ano, pag sinabing information, it refers to the data or facts na na-share ni sender to the other person. Okay? For example, in-interview ka ng isang radio announcer about an incident sa lugar ninyo, and the announcer asked for your name and such. Okay, so that's a form of information giving. Okay? So for instruction naman, it is giving facts plus some organizing or interpretive principles. Okay? Like for example, hmm, namatay. So for the instruction naman, it is giving facts plus some organizing or interpretive principles. Like for example, kapag yun nga, hiningi ng someone ang pangalan mo, that would be informational. But if he or she uses it uh, uh, to teach you to write to how to write Hangul, the Korean writing system, then he or she would be giving an instructional message. Okay? And for persuasion, from the word persuade, it is the message designed to alter the person's beliefs or behavior. So, what are example of this? The very timely, the political campaigns, no? The commercials na napapanood natin sa ads sa YouTube, sa television, okay? Ganun din yung speeches, no? So, there are persuasive types of speeches. Yan, sermons, isa rin siya example, and some other kinds pa ng message that can appeal sa personal motives ng mga tao. Okay? And for entertainment naman, yan, so it amuses and gives pleasure sa tao. Okay, so nandyan yung ating entertainment industry such as radio, television, film, theaters, mga ganon, no? At syempre, speeches and normal conversations, they could also be forms of entertainment too. Okay? So for the second category, we have the function of speech and oral comm for the society's standpoint. Okay, so they are surveillance, correlation, socialization, and entertainment also. And so as for the surveillance function, it is served by the mass media when they monitor and report what is happening around us. For example, yung pagbabalita ng Marinduque News tungkol sa doon sa ginawang political rally for VP Lenny. No? Nung nakaraang linggo. Tapos yung balita rin ng MNN about doon sa sinagawang alive sa Torrijos, no, noong linggo ng pagkabuhay during the Holy Week. Yan. So, speech and oral communication serves also as surveillance para sa ating mga tao na nasa society. Okay? Next, for correlation naman, so it is the function na provide din ng mass media. Okay? Pero ito naman ay when they interpret what is happening in the environment. So kanina sa surveillance ay nabalita lamang nila kung ano yung nangyari. Pero dito sa correlation, may interpretation na ng message. Okay? For example, doon sa ginawang political rally, the speech and the oral communication becomes correlational when the balita or the news or the broadcast ng mass media ay na-explain na kung bakit the political rally happened, ano, and when and where the political rally happened and what happened doon sa mismong rally. So, that's the correlational function of speech and oral communication para sa society. They interpret the message and they send it to us, to the society. Okay? Yeah, next, of course, the socialization function of speech and oral communication. And very familiar tayo dito. Ano, dahil ito yung ating isinasagawa araw-araw sa araw-araw nating pamumuhay as part ng society. Now, we play our roles as members of the society, and we do that, of course, with the use of speech and oral communication. Yan. And lastly, entertainment. So just like the standpoint ng sender sa naunang category, entertainment is the primary function of mass media as a source of enjoyment. So nandyan yung mga soap operas, yung mga teleseries, mga Netflix series, ano. So ganun din yung mga noontime variety shows such as It's Showtime, yung Itbulaga, okay, yung mga ganun. So, they do speech and oral communication to entertain the society. Okay? Yeah, so for the third and last category, we have the receiver standpoint. So for the receiver naman, ang speech and oral communication ay nag-function siya for personal identity, for social integration, no, for cognitive, and for escape function. Yan, so pag sinabi natin personal identity function, ang speech and oral sila daw yung nakakatulong sa atin to understand who we really are. Kasi, di ba nga, ang konsepto natin sa sarili natin ay hindi inborn, di ba? Nade-develop lang natin to, lalo na when we observe ourselves kapag tayo ay nakikipag-interact, ano, kapag tayo ay nakikipag-usap at nakikitungo sa ibang tao, okay? And when we communicate with others, we represent ourselves to them verbally and non-verbally. For example, kapag pinraise tayo, ayan, so masasabi natin na ay magaling pala at maayos pala ako makitungo, ganyan. So we are able to know our personal identity. Okay? Yan. Next is the social integration function. Okay, so ito naman yung way in which speech and oral com is used to meet our need to belong sa society. No? So, yung ba parang para magkaroon ka ng linkage between you as tao at ng iba sa iba, no? Kasi syempre, 'di ba, we need human contact and interaction. Sabi nga ay, no man is an island. Ibig sabihin, no one is truly sufficient, self-sufficient. Lahat tayo, we must rely on the company and comfort of others in order to thrive. Okay? And speech and oral communication ang ating kailangan to do that. Okay? Okay. So next we have the cognitive function. And so at dahil cognitive nga, sinasabi dito na ang speech and oral ko may isang ability naman to use symbols and to internalize speech. Okay? So this function um, actually makes memory and imagination possible para maintindihan natin ang current events since we can remember the past and pwede natin siya magamit no uh, yung ating experiences doon to shape the future activities. Like for example, as a leader ng isang group activity ninyo, ano, for example, sa Rizal, yan. The group leader talked to his or her group mates na dapat ay kunwari gawin na natin to ngayon, yung preparation para sa ating report dahil sabi ng group leader ay from his or her past experience, natuto na siya at para hindi magdali-dali ano, at hindi maubusan ng oras at hindi maabutan ng deadline, ano, so kailangan na natin siyang gawin. Okay, so through the past experience ni group leader, vinocalize niya or um, sinend niya as the speaker yung information sa kanyang group members na kailangan na natin gawin yung ating um, preparation para sa group reporting. Okay, so they get what I mean? I hope yes. No, and yeah, another thing, because of the cognitive function of speech and oral communication, inaalaw din tayo to see and understand things from others' point of view. No, so kahit hindi pa talaga natin siya nararanasan at nakikita in person. So, for example, nakwento sa'yo ng kausap mo yung pinuntahan niyang lugar. So, through speech and oral communication, nade-describe na sa'yo yung lugar na pinuntahan niya, even without you having a personal experience doon sa mismong lugar na yun. So, nai-imagine mo na yun through the words and explanation and description na nabigay sa'yo ng iyong kausap. Okay? And even when someone is sharing his or her feelings or his or her experiences sa iyo, even kahit hindi mo pa siya na-experience talaga, uh, parang through that speech and oral com, yung pag-vocalize niya sa'yo ng kanyang emotions and feelings, naiintindihan mo na rin yung kanyang sitwasyon. Okay? So that's the cognitive function of speech and oral communication. And finally, the escape function of speech and oral communication. So it refers to the communication as a means to relax or to um, release tense. Okay? So, ayan. Di ba't ang iba sa atin or marami sa atin, may natawag tayo na go-to person, di ba? Yung ating natakbuhan whenever we need someone to talk to. Yung kailangan natin, kapag may kailangan tayong advice, siya yung pinupuntahan natin. Pag kailangan natin may mapagsabihan ng problema or ng naisip, yung go-to person na yun yung ating inapuntahan. And with that, speech and oral communication plays its role as an escape function sa ating mga human. Okay? So are we clear with these three categories of communication functions? I hope yes. Yan. And finally, we are down to our next and last lesson under our topic 1. And yeah, now we are to discuss naman the definition, nature, and characteristics of language. Okay, so kanina, speech and oral com, yun yung nabanggit ka na, speech and oral com, speech and oral com. But now, I am to introduce you naman sa pinakang importanteng element sa isang communication. ang language. And as you can read dito sa slide, mababasa, ah, excuse me. Ayan, so mababasa nyo na rin dito sa slide na to. Sabi ni Ronald Eduardo, language is the element of society, allowing people to live, work, and play together to tell the truth, but also to tell a lie or lies. Language allows people to say things to each other and express their communication needs. So, ayan. So, because of language, we can communicate. People could communicate and interact with each other. Okay. Yun. So, kaya masasabi natin na language is very important talaga. Now, so without it, probably we would not be able to survive in this world. Kaya kasi we really need to communicate. We need to select words that are clear and appropriate for us and for our listener. At magagawa lang natin yun with the use of language. Okay? Wait lang. Okay. Yan. And, okay, a second, wait a second. Yan. And in order for us to come up with a concrete definition of language, let's discuss muna its features, okay? Mhm. Wait a minute. Okay. Yan. So first, language is a system. Yan. So, sinasabing system ang language dahil there are sets of things working together para makaproduce or kaya ay kung bakit nag exist ang isang language. So, ano yung mga bagay na yun? Well, um, the systems of language function through sounds, words, and structure. Okay, so pag sinabing sound, yun yung sound ng bawat individual letter. Okay, like for example, the sound of letter L. L. So the sound is L. Sound of letter M. It sounds like Yan. So, isa na ang sound doon sa system na inatawag. Okay? And, yeah, ikalawa ay words. So, ayan, syempre, there are words when we communicate, 'di ba? We use words, we select words, proper words, para ma-convey natin yung ating message appropriately. Yan. And lastly, may natawag tayo sa English language na sentence pattern. So, yun yung structure para makabuo kita ng sentence. Okay, so, di ba may natawag kitang subject and verb agreement, ano? So, di kasi pwedeng gulo-gulo yung words natin sa isang sentence. Katulad na lang nitong language is a system. So, hindi siya pwedeng system, language is, So, di ba nawawalan siya ng sense or meaning. Hindi natin naiintindihan kung ano yung um, meaning ng sentence na yun kapag gulo-gulo siya. Kaya, no, kaya we process the information inside ourselves, inside our minds, and respond kapag maayos na yun by sending the message through language na ina-applyan natin ng proper system. Okay? And so second feature, we have language is symbolic. Okay, so pag sinabing symbolic, it uses symbols. Okay? And according to Adler and Radman, language is a collection of symbols na nag-process or nag-possess ng certain properties. So, paano niya nasabi to? Okay, so, well, di ba, when we communicate, the language we use contains elements which consist of letters of the alphabet along with punctuation marks, 'di ba? And those are symbols. At kapag yung mga symbols na yun, say for example, the question mark, um, the individual letters, yung mga ganun, walang use yung mga yun or walang essence yung mga yun kapag hindi sila naka-arrange or hindi sila ginagamit sa kanilang respective function sa language. No, kaya dapat pag nagamit natin sila in language, they are arranged in their proper sequence para magkaroon sila ng meaning. Okay? Third, we have language is conventional. And yeah, when we say conventional, it is based on or in accordance with what is generally done by most of the people. Okay? And obviously, language is the means of communication that is accepted by a large number of people. In fact, lahat tayo nagamit nito, paparitan or spoken language man yun. Okay? And normally, with the language we use, a group or culture identifies itself. Okay? So dito sa atin sa Marinduque, for example, we are widely known and identified as Tagalog persons who use ngani, mandinbaya, yung mga ganan. So, language is what almost all people in the world uses, and it is widely accepted, therefore conventional. Okay? Yan. Fourth, language is learned. Alright. So first of all, it is no secret naman sa ating lahat that our first language, which is the Filipino language, naturally comes easier to us than our second language, which is the English language, no, and the other foreign language, 'di ba? But we humans are born to learn language and instinctively begin picking it up noong bata pa tayo. And even though language is something that we must learn, um, research has shown that the instinct to do so is present from birth. Okay, so like we intuitively learn to communicate the with others by forming an understanding of the words and rules of our mother tongue, which later provides the template uh, para maintindihan natin yung ibang language. Okay? Then after acquiring our first language, we learn naman all new languages in relation to the one that we first learned. No? That's why languages that are more similar to our native language come easier to us, and languages that are more different naman are more difficult and take longer to learn. Okay? Yan, in other words, uh, each culture or group of people learns language to modify the general language to meet its own needs. Okay? Yan. And lastly, language changes. Yes. And so is every other human being. Okay? Language is always changing, evolving, and adapting the needs of its users, tayo mga tao. Okay? And this is not a bad thing, yung pagiging uh, pabago-bago ng language, hindi siya masama. Dahil kung hindi nagabago ang language since, say, 1950, we wouldn't have words to refer to like modems, Wi-Fi, fax machines, ano, so, ano yung mga tawag ninyo doon, natin doon, ng cable TV, no, television, ano. So, as long as the needs of language users continue to change, so will the language. Okay? It's just that the change is so slow that from year to year, we hardly notice it, 'di ba? ah, kapag binasa natin yung writings ni Gat Jose Rizal, di ba? The Noli Me Tangere and the El Fili. So, parang it can be very difficult for us, di ba? Ayan, so if we go back to common era, just like what you can see in your screen, yeah, this is the oldest written document in the Philippines. So it seems like we are looking at a different language now, but that was the Filipino language before. And if language doesn't change, we definitely are using these symbols pa rin hanggang ngayon. Ganyan tayo magsulat. At yan yung symbols ng ating mga ginagamit sa speech and oral communication. Okay, so are those features of language clear to you guys? I hope yes. Ano, sana ay nakakasunod kayo or nakasunod kayo at nakapag-take down kayo ng notes during the lecture video. Kasi kung hindi, kailangan yung ulitin to at intindihin. Okay? So, yan. So then, what is language? Ano nga ba talaga ang language? So as you can read in this slide, language is a complex system of symbols shared and used for communication by members of the same community with the same geographical area or the same cultural tradition. Okay, so examples of language are English, Spanish, Filipino, Korean, Mandarin, Nyanggo, what else? Uh, and yeah, even the Tagalog, Ilocano, Cebuano, Waray, Marinduque, Tagalog, no? Pero baka may magsabi agad sa inyo na, Ma'am, mali ka po pare, bagat dialects po yan, no, yung mga nasabi mong mga nahuli at hindi yan language. Yes, you're right. Dialect ang tawag sa mga yon sa Marinduque Tagalog, sa Cebuano, Waray. Pero you should also remember that dialect is a specific kind of language spoken by a defined group or region. So you see that language is a broader term and dialect comes under it. Its shade na. So language din sila pero specified. Okay? So naga-differ lang sila by means of intonation, vocabulary, and even other alternative ways of forming certain statements and questions. Okay? Yeah, so that is language, and it is the most important element sa speech and oral communication na siyang ating pagtuunan ng pansin all throughout this subject. Okay? And yeah, down for the last slide. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope you understand the three lessons we tackled in this session. And if you have questions or clarifications, you may raise them sa ating group chat, okay? And kung may mga kailangan pa kayong further paliwanag, you may raise it din sa ating GC. Okay? Yan, again, thank you so much, guys.